Hi, good morning, everybody. Today's session is going to be looking at the latest version of Cim50 and in particular looking at the graphical scheduler module on there. What I've got is, a brief PowerPoint session. You'll be pleased to know it is brief on that side of things because PowerPoint isn't one of my my greatest skills, and neither's sort of my creativity on that side of things. So what I've got is a brief agenda on the session today. What I want to do is an introduction to the graphical scheduler module and an explanation of why Cim have introduced it, and also a bit of an explanation of why they've introduced it now. I'll also be looking at the benefits that a module like this provides and some of its key functionality within the system there. One of the other things that we'll talk about is this is Cim's first release of the graphical scheduler module on that side of things on there. So even while they've introduced it now, there are some possible future enhancements that they're already considering in coming releases on that side of things. So we'll explain what the system does at the moment and some of that functionality that they may look to add to the system going forwards on there. Then I'll move into a live demo, so fingers crossed on that side of things, and we'll come back to any questions on that side of things there. The reason that Cim have introduced the graphical scheduler module is that it's always been one of the sort of key wish list items that Cim have had to add into the program on there. Even from the very first release on the system there, it was, you know, functionality that people were asking for and Cim wanted to introduce to the system on there. The challenge of introducing something like that was always down to either finding the right sort of tools to integrate with the Cim50 program for that would be the right price point for the system there, and the right sort of complexity for the system in there. So one of the challenges of scheduling software on there is some of the scheduling software that is available is either very expensive or incredibly complicated. Some of you may remember in the old Sage 50 manufacturing module, Sage had integrations with a piece of software called Preactor as a planning tool on there. That was a very powerful piece of software, but because of that, it was quite cumbersome and difficult to use, and the take up on use of it was very small on there, just because it was so difficult to use and almost required, you know, full-time planning operations in there to make it work in that side of things. So Sage dropped that partnership going forwards on there. What Cim have now found is they've found a tool that they can use for the graphical element of the system, which is a web-based tool on there that they can integrate into the Cim50 program and provide the visual and the ease of use that they think is required within the Cim50 program on there. So the benefits of a scheduling tool on there are really giving users the ability to easily oversee all of the shop floor operations that they have throughout the production side of things there. I've been to lots of customers where they've got manual systems, be it whiteboards that they've, have writing on, and some people have even strips of paper put to different lengths to describe how long jobs are going to take on there. I've also seen, the more traditional and maybe old-fashioned approach of T cards being moved into different slots to realize whereabouts they are in the production program on that side of things. So one of the key benefits of this is that easy to see visualization of the information on there. The other thing of it is it allows users to easily see what their production plans are and to sort of make adjustments to fine tune those easily. So allowing the system to easily identify where there might be bottlenecks of resources requiring the same resources being needed to perform the same operations simultaneously that isn't possible on that side of things, or also the opposite side of that, to be able to predict load imbalances, so to be able to identify maybe where resources are being underutilized on that side of things there. So giving that overview of the information there, allowing people to be agile and sort of move their production plans accordingly on that side of things there. So some of the key functionality that we'll be looking at and seeing that the graphical scheduler offers on this side of things is the ability to easily identify where there are resource conflicts on the system on there. So in terms of the way the system works and the way Cim works, resources can either be sort of machines that are held against operations within the Cim50 in the bills of materials, or can be labour resources on the system here. In my demo in a bit, we'll look mainly at sort of machines as a resource on there, and we'll see examples where I've got multiple operations being required on the same group of saws on that side of things, and how I can, see that conflict and make changes to that on that side of things there. What the system also offers is we've got dynamic color coding against works orders and operations in the system there. So a bit like some of the functionality we have within the standard Cim, where we've got items being highlighted in red to warn us of items that are going to be late on the system there. Within the graphical scheduler, we'll be able to easily identify the difference between works orders that are going to be completed in advance of their due date, works orders that are going to be late and warn us on those. And we can also see works orders that are at risk of being late, so things that are finishing just in time against their due date, but might still cause issues on that side of things there. We've also got the ability within the graphical scheduler, as an alternative to the capacity scheduling tool that is available within the works order sections of Cim50, we've got an alternative view of that same information, so we can identify, how much of a resource is being used on the system there, and identify, as I say, those load imbalances on the system there, so we can see where we're overloading machines, or alternatively where we're underloading machines on there. Within the graphical scheduler, we've got the ability that both operations and potentially subassembly works orders that are linked to finished items works orders are pegged together on that side of things. And what that means is that if we are moving and dragging and dropping when an operation or a sub-assembly works order is going to finish, it will automatically move future operations or future works orders that are linked to that side of things in there. So my demo data is a bit about, it's quite tables and chairsy in there. If I've got legs that I'm making to go against a desk on there, if I'm going to finish making my legs late, that is automatically going to impact on when I can start making and finish making the desks on that side of things there. What we can also do within the screens in there is we can alter the way that we look at information on the system there to make it sort of more user friendly in there. So we've got the functionality to be able to sort of apply filters to the system in there. So if we want to just see individual works orders or individual customers information, we can filter on that. We can also group the works orders and information together in different ways. So again, if we wanted to be able to group and see all the works orders that we've got that relate to a particular customer on that side of things, because we need to plan our schedule in terms of our most important or most demanding customers on that side of things, we can apply that information on the system there. Within the works orders, within the graphical scheduling there, we've also got the ability to drill down and look at information relating to the works orders and operation details on there. So that information that exists in Cim50 in there is shared and visible within the graphical scheduler on there. And we've also got the ability, both from within the scheduler or within Cim50 itself, to be able to lock works orders or operations in there. So if there are things that we want to say, this must happen here, we don't want those to be available to somebody else to move on that side of things, we can lock that information down. And then finally, the system is automatically a multi-user system on there, a bit like Cim50 itself on that side of things. Now, one of the limitations of the multi-user use of the graphical scheduler on that side of things is that it's the last change that wins on the system there. So if you do have two people opening the scheduler separately, they'll both be working on their own version of the scheduler on there, and the last person to effectively press save and send that information through to Cim is the person that will be updating the data on that side of things on there. So although it is multi-user, just a bit of thought involved in how you apply that side of things on the system there. So as I mentioned, this is the first release of the graphical scheduler tool on here, and Cim have already got plans for development that they would like to make and some changes that they might introduce in the future on here. So one of the key things with it is, at the moment, the graphical scheduler is looking at the works order module within Cim50 on there. So it's based on works orders that you've already created and then scheduling those works orders into the system on there. So one of the first things that Cim are considering for future releases is introducing the graphical scheduler at an earlier stage on there. So rather than waiting till you've potentially run MRP and created the works orders on the system there, looking at the graphical scheduler and linking it to the MRP recommendations on that side of things there. So you can do the planning at the point of what are we going to need to make, not what have we already created works orders for on that side of things there. Another area that the system doesn't have at the moment, but is under consideration for future releases in there, is the ability within the scheduler to recognize either planned maintenance machines or expected downtimes of machines, or in the case of, labour elements, holidays within the system on there. At the moment, the scheduler is based on your standard working day within the MRP planning module of the system in there. So in the future, there are plans to be able to expand that so you can, make adjustments on different days. As I say, if you've got a machine that is going to be down for maintenance next week, you can build that information in so there is no availability to load things onto those machines on there. Another item that is on the possible future enhancements lists, although to a degree it already exists in the Cim50 data, is with the graphical scheduler, it will send information back to your works orders, and within the Cim50 program itself, there's the work to list and work to view that you can look at on that side of things there. One of the things that Cim recognized the graphical and sort of web view of things could be useful for is for that work to list to be shown on a website on that side of things there, so that if you wanted to have that website shown on a screen within the shop floor on that side of things, you could have a simple view of sort of work to lists on that side of things on there. A couple of other things that are part of the future enhancements on there is, one is, and again, is sort of the ability to maybe split operations in the future on there. So, for example, if I was making, 100 legs on there, and I know there is some drilling to be done on those legs on there, at the moment, I would have to say all 100 of those legs need to go onto the same drill for planning on that side of things there, unless I went into Cim and actually split the works order out. In the future, there's the potential that we could say, well, actually, within that works order, I want to be able to say 50 legs are going to go on to drill 1 and 50 legs are going to go on to drill 2 to speed up the process on that side of things there. And another item which probably links back to the top one on the MRP recommendations on there is, as I say, at the moment, the scheduler is all based on the works orders being produced on that side of things there. In the future, there's the suggestion that maybe with the MRP recommendations, as well as looking at the recommendations to make items, the scheduler could take into account the recommendations for stock that needs to be purchased on that side of things there, so that the system would prevent you from planning to start making something before you were recognizing components were going to come in to the system on there. At the moment, and again within the MRP, because it's run on sort of backwards scheduling and infinite capacity on there, the system will tell you when you should be making things, but it will warn you if you've got items that you need to buy to make those items that are going to be later than they're needed on that side of things there. Within the scheduler, the idea is that you could, hold that information together on that side of things. And finally on there is the ability of having multi-company views on the system on there. At the moment, there is a workaround for that if you've got multiple web, or you can have two web servers to each look at different company data on there. But in the future, Cim would like to make that a bit easier and sort of work within the same company on that side of things there. Linked slightly to that information around sort of future enhancements and things on there. One of the things I want to share with you and show on the system there is Cim have recently amended their website and launched a new area of their website which is designed for Cim50 users and customers on the system there. So if you sort of follow these links, and we'll share these links after, when you first log on, you'll be asked to register your user, your email address and name on there, so Cim can check that you are sort of users of the software on there. And within these areas of the system here, they've got roadmap, so sharing what their current plans are for future releases and what information they're going to add into the future releases on that side of things. And they're also sharing their wish list on there. So again, you still have the option of raising suggestions for developments to the software, to solutions for accounting and our support team that we'll pass on. But you also have the option of entering them directly onto the Cim website, and also the ability on there to see recommendations and wishes that other people have placed onto the system there, with the ability for you to add your vote and your support to those wishes on the system there. And as you'd expect, you know, Cim are looking at that and using that information to sort of develop additions to the software on there. So the more votes items have, and more weight there is behind suggestions on there, the more likelihood of that being added into the software will go on there. So I'll move that from my screen now. And now what I'll do is launch into the demo itself on here. So this is my sort of, you know, fingers crossed and listen to TV presenters of the, you know, don't work with children's or animals or live demo data on here. But what I'll start with, so I'll start in Cim50 itself on here and my sort of works order screen in here. So in my data, I've got, to make things sort of easy and visual to show, I've got half a dozen or so works orders within my system in here. You can see I've got one works order that's highlighted in red because we're currently going to be finishing it after its due date on that side of things there. And within all of these works orders, I've got a number of sort of different operations against the works orders, with different time against the different operations, and each operation associated with different machines in the system on here. Within my settings and my scheduler settings on here, I've got the ability here to select what resources I want to send out to my scheduler to base my planning on here. So you can see in my data here, I'm just sending the machine resources out. If I wanted to, I can send machine and labour information out as well, depending on what information I need to, what level I need to go of my planning on that side of things there. And I've also got an option here. So one of the things I'll show you in a moment is there are two ways that I can view my information on here. I can either look at that information from a works order scheduling view or a resource utilization view. I've got the option, so I can always see both. I've just got a default option as to when I first load the scheduler, how will that information be shown on that side of things on here. So from within Cim50, I can click on my scheduler view on here, and what it will do is send that data into my sort of web view on here. In my example, I'm running this on Edge. Cim have tested this on all of the standard web browsers on there, so it doesn't matter what web browser you're using on this side of things, whether it's sort of Edge, Chrome, Firefox, all the standard ones are being tested on that side of things on there. And so what I'll do is I'll just start with a bit of navigation around the system on here, and just start with some of these options across the top on here. So as you can see on my sort of system here, I've got some undo and redo options on there. So as soon as I drag and drop something on the system there, I've got an option to allow me to, undo it, or if I've changed it and want to go back, I can bring that information back on the system there. I've got the ability to sort of jump my schedule to today on that side of things. So if I just want to move things along to have my view looking a bit more accurate, I can bring my information over on that side of things there. Across the right hand side of the screen here, looking probably in sort of slightly the wrong order here, but my upload option has now got a red line against it. That's because it's recognized I've made a change on the system there. So once I've made a change on there, that item showing as red on there is telling me that if I want to send those changes back into my Cim50, I can do that by clicking on the option on here. Alternatively, if while I'm in this screen, I want to I don't want to save any of those changes and I want to download my information from Cim50 again on there, I can click on the download option. And if I do that, that will wipe out any of the changes that I've made on the system there. Alternatively, a different way of downloading and refreshing that information on there would be just to refresh my browser on the system there. And when I've made that refresh option, you can see it's lost my sort of redo and undo options on there, and my upload option, because there are no changes in there, so there's nothing new for me to send back to Cim50 on there. It's got rid of that view of the information on the system there. I mentioned earlier that there were two different views on the system there. So at the moment, I'm in my scheduler works order view on the system there. If I want to switch the view to look at the utilization view on there, again, something that it will do is when it switches views, it will automatically reload down the data on that side of things. So again, when I'm switching views and before I switch my views, it will always come up with this warning to say, switching the view is going to lose any of the changes that you've made at that point in time on there. So are you sure you want to switch the views before sending that data back into Cim, or are you happy to make those, to move over with and lose those changes on the system there? So I'll toggle over and we'll come and have a look at the resource view in a bit later on there, but you can see again, top right hand corner will just change my description of the view that I'm looking at on the system there. And the last options I've got across here are really just personal preference visual options on there in terms of whether I want this information showing in sort of a light view with the white backgrounds and things on there, or whether I want it in a dark view on that side of things there. So again, just changing those options a little bit there so that it can be as sort of user friendly as people want on that side of things there. So what I'll do is I'll switch back to my works order view on the system here. And as you can see on my sort of screen here, I've got my top of my screen split in two on here. On the left hand side, I've got my list of works orders on here, whereas on the right hand side, I've got the list of operations and the movements for them on here. Now, within the left hand side here, as you'd kind of expect for any sort of Windows and sort of list view device on there, I've got the ability by clicking on individual columns to choose to resort those columns, a bit like within Cim itself on there. If I right click in this option here, I've got the ability to select different columns that I want to show on my screen, or move some of those columns off the screen on there. And a couple of things that I mentioned before, things like being able to apply a filter on here. So if I only want to look at works order 110 on there, I can apply that filter to just show that works order across the top of my screen on there, or hide the filter on there. And so again, when there is a filter running on the screen there, you'll see the little filter icon within that column there just to warn you that there is a filter running in there. So again, visual on that side of things there. The other thing that I mentioned before, and I can do with right clicking again, is potentially being able to group information based on the data I've got on the screen on here. So if I wanted to group by my customers on here, what I can do is I can see for Smith Limited, I've got 2 works orders on here. And again, depending on how I want to look at the information, I can expand or contract that information on there to show those works orders. So as I say, if I'm wanting to do my planning based on the customers I'm trying to serve on that side of things, and rather than works orders themselves on there, and what you'll find at the bottom of my data here is I've got potentially a number of sub-assembly works orders or works orders that have been made for stock on that side of things that aren't related to any particular customer on there. So again, might not be so relevant in my planning side of things on there. And again, because I've got the sort option in there, I've got my icon across the top here telling me I've got the grouping running on the system there. So I'll just set my data back on that side of things there. Across the left hand side, when I'm actually looking at the dates of information on here, again, I've got the ability to sort of run filters on here. So this time, rather than filtering on works orders, I've got the ability to filter on particular tasks on there. So if I only wanted to look at my cutting tasks on the system there, I could filter that information on the screen there, go into sort of more detail on that side of things. I've got the ability to choose how detailed or how sort of undetailed I want my sort of dates to look at. So I can zoom into my schedule and could show my schedule right down to every 5 minutes on the system, or I can take the schedule right out to just be looking at years on the system there. An alternative way that you can sort of zoom or unzoom on the system there is using the sort of control key and sort of scroll on keyboard or anything on that side of things there. So if I jump back to today and just zoom in a bit further just to make this useful on that, should be about right on there. I can start having a look at some of this information on the system on here. Now, again, one of the things that I mentioned before is the sort of concept of like color coding within the system on here. So my item works orders that are highlighted in green is telling me that those particular works orders will be made in time for their due dates on that side of things on there. On my data, and hopefully it will be visible and on the screens as people are looking at it, is I've got my works orders that are showing as an orange and amber color here. This is warning me that these works orders are going to be late on that side of things on there. And the other change that I can make, as I say, with this being interactive on here, is if I drag and drop and change that item so it's going to be finished just in time, you can see that's changed from sort of, hopefully you can see that that's changed from an orange to a yellow on that side of the screen on there. So the yellow is highlighting the fact that it's going to be finished in time, but it's maybe a risk as to being totally finished in time on that side of things on there. So across the top of the screen here, I've got the ability, as you saw, to sort of like drag and drop the operations and sort of make movements on these sides of things to plan these in on here. At the top of the screen on here, I can sort of just sort of scroll up and down and I can see that, okay, I've got one works order that's maybe going to be ready just in time, but as things stand, my other works orders are all going to be ready on time. So from that point of view, an initial view of information, that could look like my schedule is and my plan is working fine on there. However, what I do have, one of the things mentioned before, is I could have some scheduling conflicts against some at certain of these operations on here. So the bottom half of my screen here will show the operations that I've dragged and dropped on the top of the screen and where they will actually sit on particular resources that they're being added to on that side of things here. So what I can see here is I've automatically got this scheduling conflict on my SAW group or within my SAW group on the system here. And what I can see is within my SAW group, I've got two different SAWs that I can use on the system here. So what I can do to affect that conflict is I can drag those individual items from my auto sort group and actually add those onto specific saws on the system there. Now, within Cim, and I'll show you in a second about how the groups are set up in Cim on that side of things. One of the benefits of setting those up as groups on here, as you can see, I could quite happily add this operation to either of my saws on here. But if I drag down further and said, in this case, I was trying to do a saw operation on a drill, the system won't allow me to do it. So by setting up my groups of machines there, I can control what type of operations can go on what type of resource on that side of things on there. Likewise, on my drills here, I've got another conflict here, so I could drag the idea that I normally want things to go on drill 3, but I can change that operation to go on drill 5 and can make my change on there. And then I can scroll down looking to see if I have any more conflicts in the system on there. I can see I've got a conflict on my finishing time on here. So let's drag along and see where that conflict's sitting on here. In that case, I can sort of move it on here. Within my item here, because I've got a grouping that I've just nominally called machines on here, so this is anything else that isn't really in a group, I can just drag and drop option items against any other option on that side of things on here. So if I just find where I have some of those items in there, I can work my way through highlighting those conflicts and changing those on the system there to the point that I now have no conflicts on the bottom side of my screen. I'm still happy that all my works orders will be made in time on the system there. And at this point, I can upload that information and send that data back into Cim50 itself on that side of things, which will update my works order screen here. So again, you can see my top line here has moved from being red and warning me that it was going to be late. It's now highlighted in purple to signify that it was at risk on that side of things there. So in regards to my resources, those resources are all dealt with within the bill of materials settings on here. And as I look at certain machines in here, there are certain things that I've got set up in my data here. So I think my draw set assembly time on here. Let's finish an item on here. Okay. Some of my data in here, I've got the ability of choosing against a particular item what level of capacity planning I could have in there. So potentially in my finishing time, if I wanted to say, well, I've got 2 machines that are exactly the same in there, therefore I can do 2 operations at the same time on that resource without causing an issue, I can save that and make that update on there. So it won't recognize a conflict in that case if I've got 2 operations running simultaneously on that item on there. In terms of the groupings of resources, that is held within the works order capacity planner settings in here. So within this section here, I've got my ability to set up my saw group in here, and I can say going into my saw group are my saw group options and saws 1 and 2 on the system on there. Alternatively, I've got a welding machine group in here, which I don't think I've loaded anything on, but I've got sort of 3 welders on that side of things. My data there is all based on machines, but I could just as easily add a labour resource type group on here, which will look at all of the labour resources I've got, or as I set it up and switch it to machines, it will just switch to those options on the system there. So I know my demo data has been very much around machines and the setting up of machines on there, but you can see everything I've done with the machines on that side of things I could just as easily have done with labour and labour groups on there. Something else to mention that has been in Cim50 for a while, but probably becomes more relevant with the introduction of the graphical scheduler because it brings more information in, is within my MRP planning, I've got the ability of setting up my standard working week on the system there, which is what my planning and processing is going to be based on that side of things there. And that's been in the MRP side of the planning week has been in there since the system was first released on there. What was also added a couple of releases ago was when you set up a resource, either a machine or a labour resource on the system there, you've got the ability to have your own definitive calendars for different resources on the system on there. So if you did have, you know, on the labour side of things and you went down to individual for the labour, you can set up an individual's normal working week on that side of things. As I say, it will default onto what their normal working week is. So at the moment, there isn't that functionality that is on the roadmap potentially for things like adding holidays of somebody not being around on that side of things there. But if you did have individuals that only did 3 days a week, whereas some people work 5 days a week, you can set that information up for them on the system there. The last thing that sort of just wanted to show, and we sort of touched on the scheduler on that side of things, was, as I say, we looked at the works order view on the system here. A couple of the things that I sort of mentioned and we looked at on the system on here is, in my example here, you can see against works order 107 here, just like every works order, I've got my arrows between one operation within that works order and the next operation. So that pegging of operations within each works order is sort of being illustrated there. In this particular example here, you can see because I've linked this works order of a subassembly to a parent works order, you can see I've also got my pegging on here. So at the moment, where I've got this works order number 110 starting on the 13th of November on there, if I was to drag my finish date along and say that isn't going to finish till the 14th of November on there, you can see because these two works orders are interrelated on there, it's automatically making the changes on that side of things there. And again, where the system has some intelligence on there is if I try to drag and change the start date of this item forward, it won't allow me to start works order 10 before works order 107 is finished. However, because I've made a change to the start date of the item below it, and my last action was to try and move works order 110 to start earlier, by finishing this works order earlier, it will automatically recognize this on this side of things here. So that first time I did it, you saw it dragged the previous works order over on there. If I just show that again on there. So if I moved that, when I try and drag and start this earlier, it won't allow me, but by automatically changing this works order, it would drag that next works order along on that side of things. So that's an example of those linked works orders being pegged against one another on that side of things on there. The other thing that sort of want to just sort of show you briefly at the end of this side of things here is looking at my sort of resource view on the system on here. So again, what that will effectively do is the top of the screen here is effectively mirroring what I was seeing on the bottom half of my screen when I was looking at the works orders on there. However, what I'm starting to see on the bottom of my screen on here is I will now start to see the percentages of the load that I've got against individual machines on individual days on that side of things. So again, I'll start to see this with sort of percentages that if I hover over it will tell me what the works orders and the amounts of time that are being loaded onto that side of things are. It will also tell me the percentage of that daily usage that is going against those items on there. Potentially, because I've got rid of all my conflicts, the most I see on anything there are 100% on there with items showing in green on the system there. If I had anything that was over 100% on there, it would be highlighted in red on that side of things there. So would notify me that I'd got an issue on that side of things.